view on the markets at the moment and what you're making of the movement that we've seen so far, because this week has been pretty temperamental, and that without any fundamental change to the operating environment within this week.
Hi, Alishia. Morning. To a large extent, you're correct. The week has been up and down. We saw the market lose 185 basis points yesterday, led mostly by losses in the banking sector. The banking sector lost 309 basis points. The only counter that closed up was First Bank. All the other banks lost. But we still saw the majors, First Bank, GTB, Diamond Bank, Zenith Bank close on beat, so that's still a positive sign. But there was an overflow of supply in yesterday's markets for the banks.
Well, Dexter, let's stick to the banks here, because this is a sector, of course, where we have seen the fundamentals shift quite severely and the landscape change as a result there. It's gotten quite a bit of foreign investor interest so far. So how are you viewing this space specifically, looking from the outside in?
I think from the outside in, just taking a look at the whole banking sector, there certainly is a lot of growth potential there. But the only question is that people may have to ride the current storms that we're witnessing in the industry, and we're looking at a situation where we might have a bit of consolidations and mergers coming along, and that would in effect strengthen the banking sector in Nigeria. So I think some investors do look at this positively, and they're looking to more or less cherry pick some of the best banking stocks in Nigeria, because the future does look much brighter when you look at the bigger picture.
So are you buying, and if so, where are you looking?
Prefer to be stepping in and cherry picking among some of the majors, as we said. There are opportunities, for instance, where you have the bigger banks falling to more or less reasonable PE levels. I think UBA fell to around about the level of about 10 or so, and it's back at 14. So you find that when you do have instances of some of the larger entities falling backwards to levels where we feel that the valuations are making a lot of sense, I would argue that it would be a good time to just step in there and pick up some of those big stocks.
Well, Kemi, just looking at some of the stocks that have gained attention this week, we saw the technical suspension placed on stocks, Bank PHB and Spring Bank, both being lifted this Tuesday. Now that we've been trading for pretty much a week so far, run us through their respective performances over the week. Have they been hard hit?
Yes, to a large extent they have been, and it's quite expected. Investors who are in those stocks will be looking to get out as fast as they can. I mean, talking again about the big players in Nigerian banks, we've been expecting that by the time banks start to bring out their September 30 end results, we would see varied performances across board. This morning we've seen UBA publish its period end 30th September results, and we've seen it make a provision of 40 billion in accordance with the CBN special audit, and we've seen gross earnings grow by 16.9%. I mean, that gross earnings growth is well appreciable in light of the environment that the banks have had to operate in, but we expect that we will see those provisions hit hard on the bottom line for many of these banks.
At this stage, are we seeing stark distinctions being made between the banks that have, performed worse than others? Because at the start of this whole debacle, I mean, every bank was basically placed under the same umbrella. Is there more of a distinction being made right now?
There definitely is. There's a flight to quality, in quote. And we've seen the banks that investors have categorized as safe enjoy a lot of investor interest. And on the flip side, the ones who people are not very sure of, or investors are not very sure of, they've basically shied away from. The most important thing to see will be these 30th September results. We've seen UBA start it. We expect that we'll see a lot more happen in next week. When these results come out, and we will actually be able to determine which banks we can actually put monies in and which banks we really have to just wait and see on.
Dexter, you were talking about value and bargain opportunities, but at a time when investors are becoming a little bit more discerning in where they actually pump their money right now, would you be buying into any of the ailing 9, given that they're at the start of what's now being called a massive turnaround strategy?
I think I would prepare. I think I would actually use a wait and see kind of attitude, because it's not really certain as to where exactly the chips will fall. If I am to get into the Nigerian banking sector at the moment, I'd rather pick some of the larger stocks and more solid companies like First Bank, like UBA, like Guarantee Trust Bank, and stick with those for the time being.
Are local investors being a little bit more, proving to have a little bit more of a risk appetite, Kemi, at all? Or are you taking the approach that Dexter is?
I think they are beginning to develop some sort of confidence in the banking stocks. Many of the banks which had been speculated on for a long time prior to now had taken a lot of hits. There's been huge sell-offs in most of the other banks who were not part of the 5 that were initially cleared. And so we saw them trading at very low price to books, less than ones in many cases. And so that presented a lot of opportunity. That has accounted for most of the, celebration rally in quotes that we've seen for the banks thus far. We believe that those prices have gone up, and we've seen a lot of profit taking for those banks in this week. Investors, when their results come out, when the bank's results come out, we will now be able to look at it from an analytical point of view and see where there is value to be made in the short to medium term.
Well, when it comes to news surrounding this sector specifically, we've seen reports suggest that we're going to see even more of a stir moving forward, where the banking sector has the potential to lead to mass retrenchments, in the industry. What's your view on what's unfolding there?
Well, that's been quite interesting. Unfortunately, that has been the case for some banks. It's expected in light of the fact that there was so much capital raising in the last 18 months. Many banks were expanding across branches, even where it might not have been very lucrative too. And because some of them, these banks have had a change in management, and the focus is on increasing operating efficiency, increasing internal the quality of internal capacity, we might continue to see some of those restructurings happening going forward, where banks are trying to change or adapt a proper business model, and whichever staffing levels do not suit those business models will have to be reduced or optimized.
Well, Dexter, just to end off, we're wrapping this week up. We're heading into a new week. What's your outlook moving forward? Because while we're seeing some kind of light to the end of the banking sector crisis starting to emerge, there's a whole new crisis that's unfolding in the oil space as well. So the markets as a whole being kept on quite shaky ground right now.
I think there are some positives starting to develop there. We've seen the Nigerian oil sector actually come out with a statement that there might be, the oil production might go up to 2 million barrels. That's the first time this has happened since July 2008. I think the amnesty deal is working. There are a lot of hiccups, and there is a little bit of clarification which might need to be made with certain moves that are happening with the militants and everything. But on the whole, I would think the outlook remains slightly positive. There are some militants who haven't disarmed, and that might be a concern going forward, particularly when we move towards the election period. They might actually end up being used to more or less reinforce the position of various political parties and so on. So I think the outlook looks a bit rosier than it was before, especially with the increase in oil production.